I'd like to tell a little story. It's a bit of paying homage to somebody who was very inspirational to me as I started doing what I do now. And I'll tell you more about him in a minute. It was a dark and stormy night. Captain, wake up. Oh, what is it? Sir, we have a serious problem. Sorry to awaken you. Well, what is it? Sir, there is a ship in our sea lane about 20 miles away, and they refuse to move. Well, tell them to move. Sir, we have. They just won't move. Well, I'll tell them. Signal goes out. Move starboard 20 degrees at once. Signal comes back. Move starboard yourself 20 degrees at once. Who is this guy? I'm a captain. Tell him who I am. Signal goes out. This is Captain Horatio Hornblower, the 26th, commanding you to move 20 degrees starboard at once. Signal comes back. This is Seaman Carl Jones III, commanding you to move starboard 20 degrees at once. The arrogance. Who is this joker? I mean, we're a battleship. We could blow him. Tell him who we are. Signal goes out. We are the mighty Missouri, flagship of the 7th Fleet. Signal comes back. This is the lighthouse. I love this story, and honestly, I can't tell it as well as Stephen Covey. And if you ever want to see him tell it, you can go out to YouTube and type in Lighthouse Principles and Stephen Covey. He uses that as a segue when he talks about the 8th habit. But I love it because a lighthouse principle is a principle that doesn't move. That lighthouse wasn't going anywhere, and Seaman Carl Jones had every right to tell and even command that battleship move 20 degrees to starboard. All right, so let's talk about what a principle is. A principle is a natural law or a fundamental truth. And there are a couple of things. If you're wondering, well, am I looking at a principle or is it something else? And you would personally like to evaluate what a principle may be because there's no comprehensive list. They are universal and timeless. Okay? So, for example, let's take the principle of gravity, scientific principle, right? How long has gravity been around? Forever is a really good guess, okay? So it's timeless. And where does gravity apply? Does it apply only on Earth? Everywhere, universally. So depending on the mass and the attraction, even when you're free-floating in space, gravity applies. The reason you're free-floating is because you don't have a large enough mass to pull you to it at that particular point. So universal and timeless. Produces predictable results. If I start with the phrase, what goes up, what do you finish with? Okay. It produces predictable results, right? If you could jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, pretty sure you're going to go down. External to ourselves. Did Newton invent gravity? He wrote about it, but he didn't invent it. No one can invent a principle. It's external to ourselves. And finally, principles operate with or without our understanding or our acceptance. So, for example, if Jason Stout were standing on the Golden Gate Bridge and making his argument for why he personally does not believe in the principle of gravity, and he's going to prove it by leaping and not falling, what's going to happen when he leaps? He is going to fall, okay? They operate with or without our understanding or acceptance. Self-evident and enabling when understood. Can a principle, a scientific principle like gravity, be enabling when understood? Well, there's a little story about, I think it was the Apollo 13, had a little problem. Houston, we have a problem, right? And at first, it seemed that gravity was absolutely their enemy. because they were a little more than halfway and the moon was sucking them in. And for them to turn around and go back, they weren't going to have enough fuel to make the trip. So instead, a couple of geniuses said, wait a minute, gravity's not our enemy. Let's just change our trajectory a little. Let's speed up our movement toward the moon, slingshot around, use the moon's gravity to gain momentum, and hurl ourselves even faster toward the earth. And they made it back just in the nick of time. Self-evident and enabling when understood. Okay, so today's lighthouse principles, the principles I would like to address today are: the strength of your will determines the amount of energy and effort that you will exert in the pursuit of your goal. True or not true? I may try to fool you, so you could say it's not true if you want to. Is that true or not true? It's true. Okay. The second principle, the strength of your commitment, including the formality of your commitment and the manner in which that commitment is articulated, directly impacts the likelihood of your success. And finally, when we are accountable to a trusted accountability partner, the likelihood of success is increased. I submit to you that these are all principles, and you can put them to the test with the bullet points on the previous page. Now, you may have a paradigm, one way or the other, about those, and I want to talk briefly about this first, though. First of all, I want you to look at the sheer will on this young man's face. True freshman, 1 second left in the game, no time left by the time he hurls this ball here, but he has sheer will and determination going on there. And then I want you to look at the body language of this young man. It says commitment. He is committed to catch this ball that is coming down to him there, and is, in fact, as you can tell here, being interfered with, which was never called on this play. But in spite of that, he catches the ball anyway. Him and his teammate we just saw, they have accountability to each other and to the coach. And they executed a play that they had practiced. And what did it lead to? The kind of success that leads to such jubilation that you have to hug the referee as he is signaling touchdown. I have to admit that the reason my voice is a little hoarse today is that I wasn't far from this corner of the end zone when this happened. So I was in Lincoln, Nebraska on that play, and I never screamed so loud in my whole life. I had to figure out a way to work that all into my presentation today. So thank you, and no apology to the Ute fans in the room, who also had a great game this week, by the way. Yes. Okay, values. Are values and principles the same thing? No, they are not. Values are the worth or the priority that we place on people, things, ideas, and potentially principles that we just talked about. They are self-chosen beliefs and ideals. They are internal, they are subjective, and they are based on how we see the world. And they are influenced by upbringing, society, and personal reflection. If you're going to put something at the center of your decision-making, something at the center of how you live your life, let it be principles. Let your values go toward principles. A gang of thieves can have values. For example, they might value teamwork. Listen, Freddie's got the fastest car. He's the best driver. Johnny, we're going to have him hit the old lady over the head and grab her purse. And then the other two of us, we're going to run it down to the corner, give it to Johnny. We'll all meet back at the hideout. Okay, that's teamwork. Unfortunately, in this scenario, that teamwork is not based on the principle of respect for life and liberty and property. So those are misguided values. Hopefully, most of our values align with principles and not like the gang of thieves. All right, let's talk about a paradigm real quick. I used to think, well, paradigms, it's 20 cents, right? And then I realized that it's spelled differently. I got one courtesy laugh over here somewhere with that one. A paradigm is the way an individual perceives, understands, and interprets the surrounding world. It's a mental map of the way we see things. A paradigm shift is a significant change in the way we see something, leading to an alteration in the mental map, a whole new perspective, and potentially a whole different way of behaving depending on the strength of the paradigm shift. My goal for me, for you today, is for you to potentially have a paradigm shift about words that are often eschewed in society, like commitment and accountability. They don't always have the most positive connotations, and yet I'm saying they are two of the critical things that you need in order to succeed in life. All right, here's a little quote. Would somebody read this for our group here today? Who would like to read? Thank you, right there.
If you want small changes, work on your behavior. But if you want quantum leap changes, work on your paradigms.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going on a cruise in March. Actually, I'm going to Hawaii in March. Went on a cruise last March, so I'm going to Hawaii in March, and I want to lose 10 pounds. But I got a problem because my paradigm is, exercise takes so much time, and I really don't like it. That's a paradigm. It's a way of viewing something like exercise. Can I keep that paradigm and lose the 10 pounds anyway? I can, right? And if I do, in other words, I am actually using willpower, which is different than just actual will, because willpower is forcing a behavior that's in conflict with a current paradigm in order to get a short-term result. So I lose the 10 pounds. The old paradigm is still there. What happens to the 10 pounds when I get back from Hawaii? Yeah, what I lost is now found. I will find the 10 pounds again and maybe more, right? However, what if I did the harder work to shift the paradigm? Instead of, I hate exercise or I don't have time, I work on the paradigm and I adopt one that says, well, I don't hate all exercise. I really like a recumbent bike. I really enjoy weightlifting. And I really enjoy swimming. So why don't I focus on those exercises? And while I'm at it, why don't I work a little bit on some other aspects of the paradigm and focus on the good results that it gets me? And I eventually get to the point, it was hard internal work that says, you know what? I like my exercise, the stuff that I do, and that paradigm leads to a natural behavior, which is what? To exercise, right? So I could potentially hang on to the result longer. So, principle number 1, will. The strength of your will determines the amount of energy and effort you apply toward achieving a particular result. And the greater the amount of energy and effort that is applied, the greater the likelihood of your success. You have to apply energy. If you've got a gigantic boulder in the middle of your backyard, maybe you live near the Rockies and it fell down there, you know, a certain amount of energy is ultimately going to move the boulder. You have to apply enough energy to get it to move. Once it's moving, you might actually leverage off of something we call momentum. What's harder, to get it to move an inch, or once it's moving, to get it to move the rest of the way out of your yard? That first inch is the toughest thing that you would do when there's no momentum. Okay, I have a little story for you. Any of you recognize this illustration, by the way? There's a few of you that are maybe close to my age. Okay, a couple of you recognize this. I have the, you don't recognize this. Don't you even lie about that. Okay. This was a book I had as a kid. But I want to tell you, this could be a fictional story, this first part, but Waddy Piper, the author, wanted to make a little money with his writing skills, loved writing for children. He said, you know what, I'm going to write my first book, but I'm going to keep it simple. And the name of the book was The Little Engine That Didn't Think She Could. And then you opened up the book, and there was just one page, and there's just one paragraph on the page, and the one paragraph is really just a sentence. The little engine didn't think she could, so she didn't. The end. It did not sell very many copies. So Waddy Piper goes back to the drawing board. This is the true part of the story now. That first part wasn't true. It was just for fun. And writes the story that we all know, The Little Engine That Could. And there was this train that was pulling some cars over the hill to all these wonderful children. And there was like circus animals and toys and all this wonderful stuff for these well-behaved children on the other side of the hill, on the other side of the mountain. But the engine that was pulling the train, a bigger engine, just couldn't do it. And broke down or gave up, or however that part of the story goes, and couldn't get it accomplished. So here's this car off on the sidetrack, hoping for some help to come by. And here comes the little engine. And the clown flags her down and says, "Would you be willing to take our load over the hill to these wonderful, deserving children?" And she said, "Well, I'm pretty small, but I think I can." And so they hooked up the train car with all of the animals and the toys, and she started to move, and her wheels were slipping, but she got a little bit of traction, and the train moved a little bit, and she said, "I think I can." And then she gained a little bit of momentum and started going, and a slight incline, and it got a little harder, but she kept moving. She said, "I think I can." And the hill got steeper, and she said, "I think I can. I 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 think I can." Until eventually the little engine crested the hill, and she said, "I knew I could. I knew I could do it." What's the moral of the story for us? Don't give up. There is one surefire way to ensure your failure. I had that volume on for a reason. Yeah, she wants to know how the presentation's going at this point. The surefire way to fail is to quit and to not get up again. One of my favorite sayings is that failure is not in the falling down, it's in the staying down. An old-time actress by the name of Mary Pickford said that. Married to a guy by the name of Cecil B. DeMille, if I remember correctly, who had a movie or two back in the day. You've got to believe that you can do it and that it's worth it, which is the next part that I really want to talk about. This is where we're going to get a little bit on the technical side, and this is directly from my book. And by the way, you are not a self-help author if you do not have 4 quadrants in your book of something somewhere, right? If you don't have it, then you're missing something. So these are my quadrants that when it comes to the worth of things, the difficulty of things, and what that does to the strength of your will. So in the left-hand column, these are the things in your life that are easy. Raise your hand if you have some easy things in your life. Okay? Raise your hand if you don't have any easy things in your life. Raise your hand if you don't like to raise your hand when a trainer says raise your hand. There's honesty. I love it. These are all the easy things. And over here we have difficult things, hard things in your life. Top row, these are the things that are worth it. And we will define what it is in just a moment. And on the bottom row, we have the things that are not worth it. So let's take something in your life that is very easy and it's worth it. Raise your hand if you brushed your teeth this morning. Please let every hand go up. Okay, I think all hands went up. Good. Okay. If you didn't brush your teeth, I hope you didn't put that you put your hand up anyway, and then go home and do it right away. Okay. So, is it easy to do? Is it easy to brush your teeth? Yeah, very easy. Okay? Most of us have been doing it for a long time. Nobody just started last week, I hope. Is it worth it? Whatever amount of effort is required, is it worth it to brush your teeth a couple of times or more every day? Okay. So what should we do with things in our life that are both easy and they're worth it? Should we stress over those things? And my suggestion is that you do it, but you do not worry about it. Just remember how easy it is. And that you do it because it's worth it, not because it's easy. Worth is the key, not how easy or how hard it is. What about things that are easy but not worth it? Now, I'm not going to say that people should never watch television. I watch my share of television. But would it be easy if you were just not feeling up to your normal load for the day to, hey, you know what, there's an I Love Lucy rerun festival on TV, right? Like the entire 7 seasons are all playing back to back on, I don't know, what's that television station that has all the old ones on there? Yes, Hulu, great. I'll take that one. Okay, so would it be easy to watch an I Love Lucy rerun marathon? For some, maybe not, right? Okay, for some of you, it might be down here.
It's difficult, not worth it.
Difficult for you. Raise your hand if it would be easy just to chill and veg and watch that marathon, okay? Would it be worth it? 8 hours of I Love Lucy, would it be worth it? Don't you dare say yes right now, okay? Now brainstorm in your mind, what are other things in life that are pretty easy, but they're not really worth it? What do we do about those things? Don't do it. Being easy is not reason enough. If it's not worth it, it's not worth it. It's not worth your time. It's not worth even the minimal effort that's required because you only have so much time. Did you know that money is potentially unlimited? I mean, you can ask some people like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett who can't spend their interest as fast as they make it. Okay, it is potentially unlimited, but they have the same limitation we do on a different resource, and that's time. Now, you might think because they're so wealthy they have unlimited time. They don't. They have 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week. That's it. So they've made some choices that lead to some freedom of choice, but they have the same amount of time. Don't do the things that are easy just because they're easy. They either align with principles and values or they don't. And you can even make arguments for leisure things that are worth it, right? The Nebraska BYU football game, that was a good chunk of time for you and me to go out there.
It was definitely worth it.
It was worth it. And by the way, there were parts of that game to watch was not easy. There were parts that were just not easy. All right, let's go to quadrant number 4 now. This is a difficult thing, but it's not worth it. What do you think about doing this one? Well, what did we say about number 3? What do we do with those? Okay, because they're not worth it. Don't do it just because it's easy. What about it's hard and not worth it? Hello? If you're not going to do it when it's easy and not worth it, don't do it when it's hard and not worth it. Okay, this is the no-brainer quadrant right here. When things are difficult and they're not worth the time and the effort and the sacrifice and the energy, identify them quickly. Now, why is this even important to talk about? Are there people that do difficult things that are not worth it? Because they don't look past the difficulty. Part of their upbringing was hard things. Do hard things in your life. Rather than just do hard, good things, they lost that part. If it's hard, it must be worth it. Don't make that assumption. Take a look at it. Jeff Sherman.
Fear and things like that fall in that category. Fear is very difficult, so don't do it. And choices that are really hard to make, so we procrastinate. But procrastinating is very difficult, so don't do it. It's interesting what we can place in that box.
There's a lot of things that can go in this box. Just make sure you're looking past the difficulty and always evaluating the worth. You've got to know what its value is to you, whether it's easy or difficult. That's the trick. Don't make assumptions. I don't have a slide that talks about what happens when you assume. We'll leave that slide off of there. Okay? But don't make those assumptions. You've got to look at something and you've got to see whether or not it aligns with your mission. How many of you have a written personal mission? Raise your hand. A few. Get one. Your written governing values, if you have those, raise your hand. A few, okay? How about a written vision for how you execute those values in your life? A few, okay? This is not an indictment, by the way. The percentages that I just saw in this room are very much in alignment with the world. There's a very small percentage of people that actually take the time to write those things down and then take the next step, which is to, at least the mission, have memorized. So that when you are in a moment of choice, you can reflect on your mission without having to fumble for a piece of paper. You're in trouble if you got to fumble for a piece of paper. It's not going to happen. To run the decision through your mind in light of your mission, and then make a decision about whether or not it aligns and what you'll do with it. Okay. Let's talk about the last quadrant. I left it last on purpose. These are really hard things, and they are also worth it. Who thinks they know what the it is?
The doing.
The doing, but sometimes doing is easy. Happiness, the goal. Okay? When we're saying it's worth it, we're talking about something like I've got to pay something in order to equal this worth over here, right?
Personal investment.
Yes, I'm going to go with that one. It is worth the difficulty, the effort, the energy, and the sacrifice that you have to make in order to get the value. That's what we mean by worth it. It is all that you have to do in order to get the other it, which is the goal. So what you do when something is both difficult and worth it at the same time, what do you do? The part that you focus on determines your success or your failure. What do I mean by that? The part that you focus on determines your success or your failure. Okay, I've got both of you. Let's go here first and we'll come over here.
Whether you focus on the worry or the task
Versus the worth,
versus the, yeah.
right? Were you saying the same thing? Mm-hmm. So, please, right here.
Usually I find there's the tenacity most people don't stick with. That's the one that always fails. Great at starting.
Yeah, so you focused on the
Yes.
focusing on the worth of it.
Once they get into it, too hard.
I have found in my personal experience, and I've been doing one-on-one coaching with business owners and individuals for over 18 years, tenaciousness directly aligns with the focus on worth. If we're focused on that thing that we want so badly because it's so worth it to us, then we are tenacious. Generally, as a society, do you think we are becoming more or less tenacious as we seek out our goals? It's rampant. Yes, right here.
And I guess would go along with that if the want to is strong enough for how it happens.
Yes, that's another great way of saying it. If your want to is strong enough, the how happens. There's a way, right? In fact, one of the things that I write about is that the truth is most people are more reasonable than you realize. And I know you're all thinking, Kip, I know some pretty unreasonable people. But when it comes to setting goals, most of you are more reasonable than most people would realize. 90+% of the goals that you set, you have every ability, capability, resource, every single thing that you need to accomplish that goal, because it's a great goal and it's reasonable even though it may stretch you. You have everything you need to do it. The only thing that stands between you and 90% of the goals that you will set is your will, your determination that accompanies that will, the level of your commitment, and whether or not you are accountable to the thing you committed to. But in terms of ability, it's a non-issue, 90% of your goals. Okay. When you focus on the difficulty, what's the self-talk? You guys know what self-talk is, right? It's that dialogue, that voice in the back of your head. It's kind of a monologue. What is the self-talk like? Excuse me, that's a BYU victory voice. Yeah, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. That's where we start, it's hard. And then we add the word you had in there. It's too hard. And as soon as we say it's too hard, what's the next step? That's it. Because once we are convinced that it is too hard for our ability, too hard for our resources, too difficult to accomplish, then we quit. So I recommend, since 90% of the goals that you set are realistic, that you avoid the self-talk that says it's too hard. In fact, I recommend that you get really clear about the level of difficulty and then focus on the worth. I'm not a fan of sweeping things under the rug. I don't think you should pretend that something's not hard. In fact, I think you should do what I call the rant. Somebody tell me something in your life that's worth it, but right now it's very, very difficult. Anyone, please volunteer.
Could be a college degree.
Okay, college degree. Are you going for one right now?
No.
It's not too late, my friend. Okay? I was 35 when I got my degree. So, okay, but let's take that as an example. So, what are some of the difficulties associated with it? Now, don't say it yet, because I'm going to time you like for 1 minute without stopping and without repeating yourself. You have to fill that minute with everything that's hard about getting that college degree. Are you ready?
Ready.
Go.
I don't have time, but I have other demands. I'm trying to keep a full-time job, and I'm studying.
You said time twice now. Keep going.
Okay. The family deserves my attention more than my personal accomplishment of getting a college degree.
Okay. Don't stop. You got a half minute.
Other responsibilities that I have to take care of mom and dad, and they're older.
So somebody said it's time. Oh, money. They're helping you. Okay.
Or like, if I spend money there, then I won't have to just spend here or somewhere else.
Okay. Okay. 10 more seconds. Keep going.
The effort to get up in the morning that early and go that 6 a.m. class I may not be able to handle that.
Okay, we're going to call that time. Was I pretty close on a minute? Anybody looking? Okay. You're actually a great complainer. Like, most people cannot fill that whole minute, and you only repeated yourself a couple of times, right? Do you think there's much more that you could really throw in there? Or did that pretty well sum it up?
Those are the big ones.
Those are the big ones, okay? So here's my point. Now, this is why I call this the rant. In most cases, you can't fill a minute without repeating yourself about all the things that are hard. So I tell my clients, do a rant. Let's time you for a full minute. If they're still going strong in a minute, I might even let them go a minute and a half. Keep going until you're out. There's nothing left to complain about in terms of how hard it is. Once it's all out and you only need it out one time, now go to the worth. Is it worth all of that you just described in that minute? Is the college degree and the perceived benefit worth all of the things that you just said in that minute? Yes or no?
Yes.
Then why would you go back and repeat any of those things? To what end, what good could that ever do you other than undo you in your determination to get that college degree? Because now you're just repeating the same stuff, potentially convincing yourself that it's too hard. It's either worth it or not worth it. So do the rant and then ask yourself, is it still worth all of that? And if you can honestly say, no, it's not, well, then you have a choice to make about whether or not you pursue that particular goal.
One of the things I would say about that, you take any project and you break it into small pieces, then you can properly assess it. If you look at the whole thing, you go, oh my God.
Kind of like eating an elephant, one bite at a time. Where were you a year ago when I gave that particular presentation? Okay, that you are exactly right. Break it down into its small pieces, and it becomes more manageable. Okay?
I don't know why, but the self-talk usually goes negative.
It tends to, right? Why? Why is that? By the way, it's not with everybody, but with a lot of people, the majority, it kind of goes toward that negative side. Any ideas about that? What's that? No one else can hear it because it's all right in here. The most important person is hearing it, the one that has the ability to help you reach your goals or not, right? Right here.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's no one to combat what you're telling yourself. There's no one to stand up and tell you, wait, that's not true. You can just keep repeating it and solidifying it in your own mind.
Absolutely. One of my favorite little quotes from Stephen Covey, He says, any weakness that you have that you argue for, you get to keep. They'll have to pry that weakness from your cold, dead fist. So if you want to hang on to it, if all your reasons why not, those are all weaknesses, any one that you argue for, you get to keep it. So why argue for it? I'm recommending that you take yourself to a level of consciousness. By the way, most of that negative self-talk is very much at a subconscious level, also known as scripting. Whether it's from scripting from your childhood, from your parents, God bless them, they did their best. Scripting from your spouse, God bless him or her, they're doing their best. Don't blame people in your life. Scripting is a real and powerful thing, but you've got to get out of your subconscious mind. Live your life awake. Live your life in the present. And think about your values and your principles and what you really want. And do you want to have negative self-talk? You know what Henry Ford said about this? Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're what? I knew you knew that answer. You weren't listening to these guys. Okay. Yes, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are right. That belief is inherently intertwined with will. Yes. Wait a minute. Before you speak any further, what team do you root for?
I cannot tell you that. Utah.
I knew it.
I would have to kill you then. Didn't both teams want to win, but only one won?
Did I ever say Nebraska didn't want to win? The field of competition is the one little microcosm in life where most life principles actually do not apply. Because life is not a competition where one person wins and one person loses. Now, don't get me wrong, people win and people lose in life all the time. But in life, you can go for and achieve, in most cases, win-win. Okay? On a football field, you cannot have win-win, especially with the new tiebreaker system. You could have, well, I guess, are there sports that still do ties? Does soccer still kiss your sister? Yeah, ties I don't do. NFL needs to get on board with the NCAA and just do the same tiebreaker system. Okay, so yeah, in most sports, there's going to be a winner and a loser. But in my opinion, if you enjoy that competition, if you enjoy that sport, the win-win is you got to participate. You got to engage in the challenge of it, knowing that by rule and definition, there will be a quote-unquote loser at the end of the game. But life isn't like that. Life isn't played with those kinds of boundaries. We play with different boundaries. That's a great question, by the way, even from a Ute fan. Somebody told on you over here. Okay, I need another reader, if you would. Don't be shy. You can if you will. The bottom paragraph, please.
When something is both difficult and worth it, your success with that thing will depend on your focus. If your focus on the difficulty of the thing you are defeated before you begin, if you even begin at all, if you focus on the fact that it is worth it, then you are acknowledging upfront that it's worth the effort required to overcome the difficulty associated with it. Your will is strength.
Okay. That's it. Thank you, by the way. I never could have read that from there myself. So, good job. All right, the strength of will. I want to tell you a brief little story here. I want to tell you a story about a young man who grew up in a very, very rough part of Los Angeles. In fact, there's a movie out now called Straight Outta Compton. Yeah, this neighborhood's not far from Compton. During his childhood, one of his best friends was killed, shot and killed, and that friend's brother. During his childhood, he has been jumped. He has had a gun pulled on him and had his life threatened at gunpoint. He and his mother eventually left Southern California and they moved to St. George. In his 9th grade year, his one love, the one thing that just kept him going was basketball. And he's good. And he blew out his knee. And with the loss of his old friends in LA, the loss of his love of basketball and the teammates and the camaraderie that goes along with that, in 9th grade he dropped out of high school. But sometime not long after that, he had a paradigm shift. I'm in charge of my life. If I'm going to be successful, I need to do the things that successful people do, and that's going to start with doing something with school. So he switched over to Southwest High School, which is an alternative high school here in St. George. And while he was there, he came through the School of Life program. Some of you are familiar with it, some of you may not be. I won't go into details today. But he had his paradigm even further shifted and strengthened about how much power and control we have when our will is strong enough to do things that will get us the success we want. And when this whole program was over and he had given his final presentation, I was in tears as he talked about where he came from, the challenges he had faced, but how much hope he had for his future and how much control he knew he had over that. Very powerful, very moving. He said to me, Kip, I want to be a public speaker. I want to be a motivational speaker. I want to help people change their lives and empower them to do what they could do. And isn't it interesting enough that that young man's name is Will? And he's right here. I'd like you to give him a big hand if you would. Will is now in the process of enrolling at Dixie State University. He wants to major in communications and realize his dream of being a motivational speaker around the world. So I absolutely believe that he will do it. And I'm honored that he has asked me to mentor him in the process. So very proud of you, Will. Okay, principle number 2, commitment. The strength of your commitment, including the formality of the commitment and the manner in which it is articulated, will directly impact the likelihood of your success. I'm going to make a bigger point about that in just a moment. Let's have somebody read this one for us real quick. I saw your hand move up. It's you. You flinched, you're up.
Commitment is what transforms a promise into reality. It is the words that speak boldly of your intentions, and the action that speaks louder than words. It is making time when there is none, coming through time after time after time, year after year after year. Commitment is the stuff character is made of. The power to change the face of things. The power to change the face of things. It is the daily triumph of integrity over skepticism.
I get pumped about commitment when I read that quote. That is one of the best quotes I've ever read on commitment, with the exception of Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And if you like my accent, then you might realize I speak a little bit of German. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would come his way. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, magic, and power in it. Begin it now. One of the most powerful quotes on commitment ever. Make the decision, make the commitment, and then let providence, let divine intervention, let whatever it is to you, the universe, let it align with your will. Because things will happen that you didn't realize would happen once you start moving. The strength of your commitment. When we combine all three elements, will, commitment, and accountability, there is still the possibility that we may not be strong enough in our language as we articulate the commitment. What we say and how we say it, especially to an accountability partner, makes a difference. So for example, let's say I have a coach and I'm making a commitment to get fit, and I'm going to do the exercise thing, and I'm going to run, and I'm going to play pickleball, and I'm going to improve my nutrition, and I tell my coach that I'm going to run 2 miles on Saturday. So what's his level of confidence that I'm going to do it on a scale of 1 to 10 if I say, yeah, I think I should probably go running on Saturday? Scale of 1 to 10. What's your confidence level I'm going to do it? 2, 3, okay. What if I said, you know, I would like to go running on Saturday. Now what is it? 4, 3, 4. I heard maybe even a 5. What if I said, I really want to go running on Saturday? Like, that's important to me. Now what is it? 6, 7. Okay. I'm going to go running on Saturday. I'm making a commitment. I'm going to do it. 8, 9. All right. I'm going to teach you something. This is called the hear me now commitment, because we don't use those words together as much as we should. So if I were addressing you and you were my coach and I wanted to do a level 10, and this is reserved for special occasions when the one before will do it in most cases, right? Hear me now. Do I have your attention? Are you listening? Because what I'm about to say is the most committed thing I think I've ever said in my whole life. I need to know you're with me. Coach, you're with me? Hear me now. God is my witness. I am going to run on Saturday, come hell or high water. Death alone will prevent me from doing it. Now you know what a 10 is. Okay, so most commitments, you can back it off of that just a little bit. You don't need a hear me now commitment for every occasion, but if you have put it off and then put it off again and then put it off again, and yet it's still really valuable to you, you may want to start with the words hear me now with your accountability partner. Okay? Let your language match the strength of your will and commitment when making a commitment to your accountability partner. So, what is the greatest ability? Come on now. Accountability is really one of the greatest abilities. When performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. 100 points if you know who said that. Okay? Principle 3, accountability. When our will and our commitment is articulated to a respected individual or group who serves as an accountability partner or partners, and we are actually accountable to that person, the likelihood of success is increased. Here's some good potential accountability partners. A respected friend, a colleague, a business counterpart. How many of you heard of 10 groups? Okay? People that do what you do in different parts of the country, but you're not in competitive regions, so you share everything with each other and hold each other accountable. That's a 10 group. Okay? Professional coach. Raise your hand if you have now or ever have had a professional coach. Look at the hands. There's a bunch of them here. Okay? Here's some accountability partners that I promise you in most cases are better to avoid. Okay? He thinks he can or she thinks she can, but I'm telling you, unless it's some rare dynamic, that accountability is not going to generally go very well. Guys, imagine yourself saying to your wife, now you had this fitness goal, honey, and you wanted me to hold you accountable, so before you chomp down on that brownie, let me just say, I don't recommend you go there. Mom and dad, not a good accountability partner, and a best friend. You'll notice all three of these things have something in common, and that's a closeness that generally precludes true accountability. So try the others above. Here's a formula for success. You may want to jot this down, and this will be one of the last things we finish up on here. S equals W times C plus A. S equals W times C plus A. Your success equals your will multiplied by your commitment plus the accountability that's involved. Or in other words, the longer version, success in anything is equal to the strength of your will to accomplish that thing multiplied by the strength of your commitment to achieve it plus the strength of your accountability to yourself and a formal accountability partner in that thing. Rate the strength of the 3 components on a scale of 1 to 10. This is loose. It's not an exact science. You're rating it yourself. How strong is my will? 1 to 10. How strong is my commitment? 1 to 10. How strong is my accountability to my accountability partner? And then run it in the formula. So if my goal is to write a book, and I rate my strength of will as a 9, my commitment is a 9, my formal accountability is maybe at an 8, and I run the math on it, I'm at an 89 out of a possible 110, or 81%. In this scenario, there's a good likelihood that I may succeed. On the other hand, if I want to increase my revenue by $100,000 by implementing a new marketing strategy, but my will's only a 6, my commitment's a 5, and my accountability level's a 4, then I'm at 34 out of 110, only 31%. I'm not nearly as likely to succeed. If you've got a goal that's worth achieving, you might want to rate those things, as I have them listed up here, and actually come up with your overall success score using this formula. If your will is strong and your commitment is strong and you have an accountability partner that you are willing to be accountable to and is willing to ask you the tough questions, that's why those bottom 3 don't work very well, then your chances for success increase significantly. All I want for all of you is to succeed on whatever it is that you want. So my book is You Can If You Will. I happen to have some copies today. As you can see, it's on Amazon.com. It's on BarnesandNoble.com. It's a couple bucks cheaper if you want to get it here today. And listen, I'm not pretentious. I don't assume you want it signed. But if you wanted it signed, I'm happy to do that. And I am definitely out of time. So thank you very much for your time.